All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, always a special edition, hosted by Nairametrics, your destination for business news, financial literacy, economy, and analysis for Africa's largest economy. It's great to have you in, and feel free to share this webinar, right? Well, get people to register the link, right, so that they can be a part of this webinar. Today, we're focusing on so much is happening all at once. We'll be focusing on the electricity sector, the power sector, so that we don't miss a thing. Today, it's the power sector in focus. Electricity generation, we know, as of Thursday, it was reported to have dropped week on week by 16.4% to 3,501.2 megawatts. That's from 4,187 megawatts last week, Thursday. Evidently, that's not sufficient for a country with over 200 million people. We have the largest oil reserves, we have the gas, we have the hydro, we have the solar resources. We have the potential to generate, reportedly 12,522 megawatts of electricity power from existing plants. So why not? And that's why there was a lot of excitement when the president sort of set the ball rolling by signing the new Electricity Act. And that's what we hope to get into today. We have our seasoned analyst who will provide us more details on this particular act, right? It's meant to be it's believed to be a game changer. And we hope to get into just that today, right? Embracing opportunities for prosperous power sector. I'm Joanna. I'll be moderating alongside Rotus, who is right now going to introduce us to our seasoned panelists who will be giving us details on today's webinar. Over to you, Rotus.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joanna. Thank you so much. Good morning, world. Good morning, everybody. Power to the people, right? Power to the people. Let me introduce our awesome panelists that are going to be taking us through the questions that we're going to have. Lots of questions. Kicking off with Ibukun Konu of Council Stream Sours and Cone. He is of counsel in the firm's Energy and Natural Resources Group. Prior to his joining the firm as of counsel, Ibukun was the head of legal and general counsel for major power and energy companies, where he advised both local and foreign clients. And Lord knows we're going to need both of them to come into our sector with this new act. He advised both local and foreign on complex legal issues in both sectors. So be sure to throw your complex questions at Ibukun. All right, now as external and in-house counsel, Ibukun has a unique perspective in understanding client requirements and providing solutions based on his keen commercial sense and wide-ranging experience. He's well-versed in commercial law, power, corporate, project finance, oil and gas, capital markets, infrastructure development, and litigation, aka the type of people Nairametrics wants to have on these very important webinars. So that's Ibukun Kono. Ibukun, you're very welcome. All right, up next, Osefan Anegbe. She's Associate Energy and Natural Resources lawyer and was admitted to the Nigerian bar in 2018. She's an associate with the Energy and Natural Resources Competition Law and Legislative Advocacy Practice Groups of Stream Sours and Cone, where she advises diverse clientele on finance, energy, and electricity transactions, as well as corporate and commercial issues. She's advised and represented several local and international companies on mergers and acquisitions, with a 100% success rate on filings with the Nigerian competition regulators. She's a member of several local and international associations, a contributor on Lexology, Getting the Deal Through, where she co-authored corporate governance in Nigeria. She has undertaken several professional courses on finance, energy law, policy, commercial negotiations, sustainable development, and international contracts regarding cross-border trade investment. And man, we need the trade here in Nigeria. She's currently a visiting student at the World Trade Institute, Bern, Switzerland, where she's researching into international contracts regarding cross-border investments and international energy governance. Osefa, you're very welcome. All right, up next on this awesome panel that we have, Biodun Ogunleye, Management Strategy Leadership. He is an experienced professional with a strong educational background and extensive expertise in management and strategic leadership, holds a BSc in Estate Management and a Master's in Banking and Finance from the University of Lagos, also a Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers of Nigeria and an Associate of the Chartered Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. Ibukun has played a key role in various initiatives, such as leading PPP projects, which this is Electricity Act is going to be about, setting up asset management portfolios, developing investment banking brands, and engaging in capital market activities. And he has been involved in international credit sourcing, issuing house and underwriting activities, capital issues, acquisitions, corporate restructuring, and mergers. So we're very happy to have Ibukun. I'd like to mention this. Some of the notable projects that Biodun has managed include the ongoing Victoria Island Power Project implementation supervision for the Akute Power Project and implementation reviews of several power projects for the Lagos State government. So Biodun, you are very welcome. Biodun Ogunde, thank you for being part of this. The projects that you're working on presently will tie right into what we're talking about. Okay, also, we have Nosa Igbinidion, who is the MD CEO of WPG, and which is West Power and Gas Limited, the majority shareholders of Echo Electricity Distribution PLC. He's an engineer with an MBA. His career has journeyed from oil and gas projects through to strategizing and executing power sector projects within the last 2 decades. He's a renowned leader and innovator in the Nigerian power sector with several landmark projects, including the first bilateral contracts on the grid, the ever popular grid, and first disco-led embedded generation project in the country. Nosa, of course, is an advocate for energy security and diversity through sustainable energy generation. He's committed to originating and developing new projects and concepts in the renewable and energy storage ecosystem. Nosa, you are very welcome as well. So that, and then of course we got more panelists. Onyinye Aneze Nzelu, she's the head mini grids, NG Energy Access Nigeria, where she manages the financing and development of multi-million-dollar portfolios of mini grid projects for rural electrification. She's a versatile professional, 10+ years experience in ICT consulting and energy management from companies including EMRC, Keja Electric, Sahara Group, and she's been awarded for her excellence and resilience by several international organizations, including the Association of Energy Engineers, USA, and the Florence School of Regulation in Italy. She is the first female certified energy manager in Nigeria. So that's some historic stuff. So well done to you. Yeah, she's a registered engineer in Nigeria, and of course, is going to be giving us so much in addition to all the other panelists. So you're very welcome. To all our participants, there's a Q&A box in there. Type in your questions, because this is literally possibly the single most important metric for economic growth in our country. So the Electricity Act, just as a reminder, signed by President Tinubu, replaces the Power Reform Act of 2005, I believe, and of course is supposed to liberalize the generation, transmission, and distribution of power, and give the power to the states. The states, that's really, I think, where this is key. So the states are going to be in the driving seats. Not sure if everybody remembers that Instagram post of Femi Otedola with the president of the AFDB, Akinwumi Adesina, and Babajide Sanwo-Olu, where in that Instagram post, he said that some deals going on in the power sector. So let's kick things off. Our first session is only going to take about 25 minutes. So we should be done at about, hopefully about 10:40 or so. So the implication of the new Electricity Act across the value chain, stakeholders, starting with the people, participants who are watching this right now, and then of course the GenCos, DISCOs, and so on and so forth. So Ibuku, I'm going to start with you. How will the act impact the consumers, Ibuku, and their access to reliable and affordable electricity? Are there any specific provisions aimed at improving the overall electricity experience for Nigerian households? And quite honestly, we could talk about this until nighttime. So Ibuku, let's talk about the people.
Okay, thank you very much, Rhodes. Yes, power to the people. The thing is, first of all, I just want to say that electricity is a value chain, and you have to get that value chain from the beginning of oil and gas, because you know the plants are powered by gas, right down to the switch in your house. So what the Act does do is to set out a framework where we can have more electricity. But there are other things that can affect the availability of electricity. Like I said, gas and foreign exchange. We all know the Naira's fallen to the dollar since it was floated, which also affects the price of gas. But what the Act has done, as you alluded to, is that it has decentralized the holding on power from the federal government and has allowed states to also generate, transmit, distribute power, and to have their own state electricity markets. Now, what this does is that it allows multiple players to enter the market at different levels, and you're creating multiple sources of electricity. We have what is called the National Integrated Electricity Policy and Strategic Implementation Plan, which the Ministry of Power is supposed to, within a year, set out this policy. And part of the policy is supposed to speak to the optimization of all our power sources like coal, natural gas, nuclear, and renewable sources. It also speaks to rural electrification, where you have captive generation, you can have standalone system generations, and it speaks to public-private partnerships as well as there's the policy to address waivers and subsidies to stimulate renewable energy development, and also to ensure that we develop the electricity value chain so that the expansion in generation, transmission, and distribution, are enhanced so that you maximize supply. So I think it was Joanna who did mention that, she spoke about the grid and, the loss of power. And that is kind of based on a reliance on just one source. We have just one grid. And so last year alone, from what I recall, the grid collapsed 8 times. So there were times where there was no electricity across Nigeria, as a whole, which was totally out of the hands of the generation companies or the distribution companies. There was a transmission network issue. So what the Act has done is to give us different playing fields where different players can enter, and you can have different sources of power so that these problems will be removed. Generation now, we're not only looking at fossil fuels such as gas or the hydro, but it seeks to include renewables in a deliberate manner such that you can have a good representation of power coming from renewable energy into what is called the energy mix. Then with transmission as well, we're moving away from transmission where TCN is the sole transmitter of energy. We're looking to set up independent networks, and you're also looking at a stage where you have what you call the ISO, which is the independent system operator. So what the Act seeks to do is to split the functions of TCN, which to act as basically the transmission end and also being the system operator. So the Act is basically looking for a way to remove part of the responsibilities of TCN so it can focus on just being, transmitting electricity. Let somebody else, an independent body, focus on administering the system. Let it regulate the system. And this has been done in other clients. But for example, in other countries, when you have an independent system operator, it's actually made up of market participants. But in Nigeria, to start off, it's been run by the government, but we hope that in time that will also transition. For distribution, we are seeing other solutions such as the mini grid, which you alluded to, off-grid, captive power, and other sources of electricity. We're also speaking to small-scale electricity generation and transmission and distribution, where a person can generate up to 1 megawatt of electricity at a site, without a license. And you have the states where we're allowed to have your states can grant rights for mini grids, and you have the independent electricity distribution networks and independent electricity transmission networks. So all of these are saying that we're basically liberalizing the power space such that you don't have just one set of people generating, you don't have just one set of people distributing, and you don't have just one set of or one person transmitting electricity. So you're going to have mini grids popping up. You're going to have areas where people that didn't have electricity don't have to wait for what we used to call in those days NEPA pole to get light. You can now have smaller projects doing solar or doing hydro or doing biomass, and it can just be for a little area supplying just an area. So at the end of the day, the consumer will benefit because you'll have multiple sources. And what you also have is that the economy will be opened up. And with the fact now that the gas price is gone up. Now, the gas price hasn't gone up, sorry. What has happened is that the exchange rate has gone up. So gas has become more expensive. For those who don't know, the generation companies, the gencos, buy gas. It's priced in dollars, although they pay in naira. So as we have seen, I think over the last few days, the price of fuel increased in relation to the foreign exchange. So that will happen with gas as well. And that is why there's a conversation that's going to go on with NERC on the increase in tariffs. But with renewable energy, once you have those startup costs, which will be reduced now by technology, you end up having a situation where if you have renewable energy, it's not subject to this fluctuation of, there's a war in Ukraine, and so the gas price goes up, or the dollar appreciates, or in relation to the naira, and then you have a spike in our tariffs. Because the renewable source of energy is constant. I mean, the sun is the sun, wind is the wind, it doesn't change. So when you have these coming to the energy mix, what you will eventually have is that it will lower the price of power, and it will also create multiple points of distribution. So not everybody will be tied to the grid, and you have the ability for states now, most importantly, to regulate not only electricity off the grid, but on the grid. Before the amendment of the Constitution and the Electricity Act, states could only regulate electricity in rural areas that were off the grid. That is where we didn't have NEPA at all, where there are no poles. But now they can even work in a situation where you have the grid. So the states can regulate, the states can, when they set up their own electricity market, they can regulate that. And it's going to be a whole new playing field, because there are going to be so many opportunities opened up for those who are ready to take advantage. And what it means, as we all know, where you have a decentralized industry, where you have many players, you have many options. I'm sure we all realize that there was a time in Nigeria when calls were maybe 50 naira per minute, and whether you spoke for 1 second or your call was dropped, you had to pay. We see what competition has done. You have per second billing, you have all different types of packages. And we hope to see the same in the energy space. So Rotus, does that answer your question?
You answered it emphatically. I was scribbling away, and I have so many follow-ups. Oh my God. You see, this 2 hours, all these nairametrics, incredible nairametrics conversations we have, we never have enough time, because my goodness, Ibukun, with everything you said, there were so many things I wanted to follow up on. But let's get the other panelists. In Ibukun, solid stuff. Thank you so much. Onye Nzelu, let's go on now with that. Ibukun he's talked about the people. He's talked about the people who are, frankly, the most important in this entire value chain. But let's talk about investors, right? Let's talk about private investments in the power sector. Onye, how will the new Electricity Act create a more conducive environment for private investments in the sector? And basically, the provisions, as far as Buko's talked about the people, what about those provisions for attracting local and foreign investors, Onye? And your mic is on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, Rotus. Exciting times ahead for us in the electricity sector. To speak about, the way we'll attract investment. So just to provide a bit more context, the EPSR, which this new Electricity Act repeals, actually built a framework for a competitive market, right? So the market was supposed to be in 4 stages until we get to a full competitive market. What this act is doing is that it's kind of already accelerating, what was pre-planned in the earlier days, right? And in a manner of speaking, when the EPSR came in, it unbundled and privatized certain segments of the market. So we had 11 distribution companies, we had gencos, TCN, as has been alluded to, was still government, and the regulator was one. Now, And in a manner of speaking, after that was done in 2013, 2014, the market was locked again. So it wasn't open again. So it's like we created another monopoly. So we brought in like 20 people in and we locked it. Now what this act is doing, it's opening it up for everybody again. So we are transitioning in again where everybody can come in. Fully decentralized, monopolized, just come in and play, right? So investors can come in, right? If the act is implemented with the intent and implemented properly, we will see new electricity infrastructure pop up everywhere. In fact, we may get to a point that you see two parallel lines doing the same thing. So even a possible duplication, right? It will attract investment. It should potentially deliver affordable and reliable power supply because it will drive competition, right? And then the 90 million Nigerians that do not have energy access, we will definitely have a plan, an accelerated plan to give those people access, right? So one of the interesting things to me in this act is that we will potentially have 37 new electricity markets because every state is supposed to, go and write their regulations and have a market. So it introduces competition among the states because the state that is able to deliver the right policy framework will attract the most investment and can solve the electricity problems way earlier than any other person. So among the state governments, we will see development of capacity across boards, right? Whether, consulting, attract even local manufacturing, right? So state governments can come up with policies that allow for local manufacturing. We will see state governments, begin to look inwards and find the best resources. So for example, we would expect that the states in the north will write policies that will attract a lot of solar resources. The states in the south will write policies that would enable more and more gas generation, right? We're going to see very unique and will I say local context driven policies that would attract those kind of certain investments into those states. And with everything, once competition comes in the market, we're going to see lower prices, higher quality of service, greater variety. I've already mentioned the different solar resources, right? States that maybe have, bagasse, sugarcane, can even begin to do things around biomass, right? So we will see that. And of course, each of these energy resources will attract different kinds of investment. And what this would do is that it will help the entire energy mix of the country, right? We would see variety of energy mix pop up in different states. Another thing that this has done, like Ibuku alluded to, is that there is now no limit. So state governments can issue licenses. Before now, if you had to generate above 1 megawatt, it was a very tedious licensing process. You had to feed into the grid and all of that. But that has been removed now. So it means that it will be accelerated. So before now, even if a state wanted to do something, if you look around, there are some licenses you see in Nigeria, and it's quite funny. You see license for 990 kilowatts. It's just because of that limit. Potentially, that investor would have wanted to do more, but you just play just below the limit. So we wouldn't see that limit anymore. So money is going to come in, investment is going to come in. I think Section 164 allows for feed-in tariff. So it means that generating companies can now feed into the grid. Again, renewables will come in. We will see whatever variety, wind, solar, biomass, all of that, because now you can feed into the tariff. There's allowance for that tariff to be negotiated in a manner that suits all the parties, right? And then Section 166 says something about tax incentive. It's not very clear, but there's supposed to be tax incentive and some other financial incentives for bringing in renewables into the sector. Another interesting thing is that MBET will transition, right? MBET, as we know it today, will transition. And that will mean that there will be a new regime for electricity trading. We will see a different kind of trading, which will also attract its own kind of investment in human capital development, because it will be open. And like I said, 36 electricity markets will be open. And then we will also have some, in fact, 37 in a manner of speaking, because there will still be some regulation done by NEC for interstate, So if we're going to have interstate electricity trading, right? So we will see all of that. And then each of these, will I say, new segments that are created in the market will attract specific investment and investment across the value chain. It will be investment in development of the energy resource. Like I said, some states might want to attract local manufacturing of certain equipment. It will be investment in human capital, because we need people that understand regulation now in 36 states, no more in the federal government. So it will attract investment in human capital development. We will see more and more trainings around that. It will attract investment, of course, in the building of generating plants. Even today, the Act gives what's it called, renewable energy portfolio, right, for each GenCo. So now GenCos are generating companies. They will be mandated to provide a certain quantum of energy from renewable energy sources. So if we had GenCos, as it's been historical in Nigeria, that deal on thermal and gas, each of them will be mandated to generate a certain type of renewables, right? And that is it's not fixed, so it's not just solar, right? So each of that, because they have to meet that requirement to remain a licensee, so it means every generating company as we know it in Nigeria today will be transformed. There has to be input of renewables into their portfolio for them to maintain their license. Of course, once there's a transition period. So once the transition period is over, so we will see new investment, especially in renewable energy resources across the value chain. So like I said, exciting times ahead for us. I'm looking forward to the next stage of the market.
Oh yeah, you sound really excited. You said it with a smile. You broke everything down with a smile. And I also, just like Ibuku also, he sounded very excited. He broke everything down with a smile. I have follow-ups, because this all sounds very, very rosy. And Nigeria, we're known for our good plans. And then when it comes to implementation, other things start to happen. But it's all good. Let me, again, for our participants, please put your questions. I'm seeing a lot of questions already in the Q&A box. Onye Nzelu, excellent stuff. Thank you so much. Let me go now to Nosa Igbenedion. Energy thefts. Yeah, this is a big problem. Nosa, you're welcome. How does the new Electricity Act combat the issue of thefts, the stealing, asset vandalization, and also non-compliance with electricity rules in Nigeria? Are there any specific enforcement mechanism? That's the story of Nigeria. We got all the laws, but how do you enforce the laws? So Nosa, any specific enforcement mechanisms or penalties in place to deter these practices and ensure adherence to the regulations? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rotus. And as the panelists before me have gone, they've seemed very, very excited, enthusiastic, and I am as well, right? But I share a lot of your sentiments. I think that with Nigeria and our population, we can always make fantastic laws and presentations, and where we struggle the most is implementing. I think the two speakers before me have clearly broken down the act, and they've shown all of the opportunities that lie therein. But in the opportunities and in opening up the market to a lot of decentralization, what you're going to find is you're going to lose a bit of economics of scale. And so by extension, prices and costs will be a lot more. And if the price is a lot more and the affordability is less, then you will see that a lot more people will find it much difficult to pay and find other means, to make sure that they get electricity. So really, I'll dampen it down a bit, because the real stuffing is in the execution. While we have all this flowery and nice things in the act, the reality is for investors and for the initial investors to come in, we need to say the right things, have the right template and frameworks, and show all of the right numbers. But to keep investors long-term, right, projects need to work. We need to execute and show that whether it be the federal government or the state or local government, whoever it is that is designing a new electricity market, it has to work. it has to attract not only local, but international capital as well. And so just to give some semblance of where we are in the Nigerian market today before we break it down, you have an average of about 45% ATC and C losses. That is the sum of the technical, commercial, and collection losses, right? The aggregates of them. And a large chunk, maybe 90% of that is commercial and collection losses. That is just fancy speak for people who have bypassed or are not captured within the system in some way or the other. And so they're either free riding, using electricity for free, or deliberately bypassing the markets. And so if you imagine you had a product where 45% of it is lost before you account for it, you will see that business plans and business models will go quickly out of the window if you don't fix that issue. However, there are a lot of things that are in the act, as the question has said, to help tackle this problem. I think it was recognized. I believe, in my own personal opinion, the discussions around having a new electricity act, changing things and putting things in place, started from discussions around energy theft. And then it quickly morphed into many other things that were lacking in the sector. And we're proud and happy that these changes are happening. But if I should speak specifically about what the Act says in 208, Section 208 to 229, there's clear provisions for how to tackle not just electricity theft, but vandalism and many other cases of compliance issues within the market. As the speaker before me said, states have that opportunity to also create their acts, their regulations, whatever will guide, and laws that will guide the operations of markets within their states. And so you could see more punitive measures, you could see other incentives, you know, to investors and to reduce the frequency of theft. So if we say, if I go back again to say 45% of the consumption is lost, it means that today, if we're producing about 4,500 megawatts, right? It means that you're losing close to 2,000 or 1,800 thereabout of the power that is produced through energy theft. And that translates to, in certain instances, almost 100 billion naira of losses, right? So to stop that, we have a breakdown in the Act that speaks about first offenders paying 3 times the value of energy that they have stolen. So if you go and connive and collude and you tamper with your meter, or you get an electrician or somebody funny to do something in your meter, the Act already specifically makes a provision where whoever it is, the distribution company, the franchisee or concessionaire, has the powers to not only charge you for what you stole, but at least 3 times that. And if you're a repeat offender, you can pay as much as 6 times the value of what you've stolen. The previous Act was not so specific about energy theft. It just had one simple proviso in the Section 94 of the 2005 Act. This Act has, like I said, almost 19 different for energy theft. So there's a thorough detail that has gone into putting this Act together. It also envisages a system where the attorney generals of state and the federal government can put structures in place within the court's framework to accelerate the prosecution of energy theft and vandalism offenders. And so what you will find is you will begin to see, even like states such as Lagos State and many other states, you begin to see almost like power task force, you begin to see specialized courts that will fast track the process, the legal process for penalizing energy and electricity offenders in general. So for me, the way I see it, I think that with the smaller structure and the decentralized nature, there will be a lot of roles for states and communities to play. Some of us live in fancy estates where we technically are already managing all of what goes into energy theft and energy management within our communities. You begin to see decentralized models where each neighbor will hold your neighbor accountable at, for energy theft and things like that. And that's the only way that we can keep projects sustainable. It's enough to have all of this decentralization and put things in place, but until we begin to get our hands dirty, get to the root of the problem, energy theft, get to the root of the problem, vandalism. I spend a lot of time on energy theft. If I go into vandalism alone, in the last maybe 1 year or last 18 months, the two discos in Lagos have suffered vandalism cases in excess of 10 billion naira. I'm telling you, people go with armed military men in the middle of the night to dig up cables so that they could sell in the open market. People go and vandalize transformers for mercury and other such things. And so what you find is a situation where the infrastructure is not already at the level where it is, but the level of vandalism is also quite high. And so we're losing assets day to day to vandals. And this act, to the credit of all who was involved in setting this up, provides enough provisions and allows states to also make new laws, fast track the prosecution, and allow community as well as other sensitization mechanisms to show people that we can't keep going and running our systems in this way. That's my take, Rotus.
Excellent take from you, Nosa Igbenedion. Thank you so much for that. And what a nugget you dropped. 18 months, over the past 18 months, just in Lagos alone, the discos 10 billion lost just to vandalism. So we hope that, as far as the government is concerned, we're going to be able to stop this, because this is a huge problem for us. We've only got 4 minutes left because we're supposed to be ending this at 10:40. This is the first session. And if I go into this next set of questions, then we probably will go over time. So you see, I said it at the beginning, the power sector, we could be here forever. So I think we're going to have to head on over to the second session, which is investing in the electricity industry. So we're going to begin with Osefa Anigbe. And because, sorry, no. We're going to begin with Biodun Ogunleye. Sorry, hold on a second. Make sure I have this right. Yes. Hang on. Do I have this right? I think I have this right. Yes, Biodun Ogunleye. No, hold on. So, Osefa, 1 second, please. But we are going to be transitioning now to investing in the electricity industry. So, Biodun Ogunleye, good morning to you. What investment opportunities does the Act create for individuals and businesses interested in participating in Nigeria's electricity industry?
Okay, thank you very much, bro. I thank everyone that's joining us for this. I also thank the Nairametric team for putting this together and inviting us to come and share our thoughts. Now, what investment opportunity does the new electricity create for individuals and business interests? A lot. We're simply saying we are recreating the way we have dealt in the market across the value chain. Well, I may not see 30-something new markets, because some of the markets on account of viability, some of the potential markets on account of viability issues may need to come together. So me, I see like a 20-something markets for us to work with. Now, be over and above that, every problem that we have seen today represents an opportunity for all manner of investment, improvement, and partnership or collaboration to take place between owners of capital, people with business interests, and engage with people who are currently holding the franchise in those areas. What am I saying? It's not just about renewables and distribution infrastructure. The first thing is that we need more capacity to come on board. And those capacity need not be renewables. We may not have space and the feedstock that the renewables may require at this point in time. But I see that in addition to all the traditional engineering components and processes that we can partner with them, we can work with them on, there is a strong need for all manner of intelligence. We're not even talking about way down AI. We're saying IoTs. We're saying before those cables can be vandalized, there will be no supply on them, or somebody must have tripped them off or something. So if we have gadgets and equipment that can relate real time, a lot of energy theft that takes place is also because data analytics are not also at the cutting edge. And then, of course, there are loads of stranded capacities that can be brought on the network. What am I saying? We have a lot of companies that operate only between 7 a.m. in the morning, absolute maximum 7 a.m. in the evening. And some of them have 50, if not 100 megawatts capacity sitting there in their compound. That is some good cash that they can make, and the system will benefit, and they themselves also will benefit. I also see opportunities in areas where there's a need for integration between the existing infrastructure and the new infrastructure that are coming in. Yes, it's time for us to also start looking at distribution infrastructure and transmission infrastructure as things that the discos or the franchisee must provide. Those facilities can be franchised out. Those facilities can be built by someone else who is collecting a toll fee and ensuring that they are always available. If it's being paid based on availability, it might just be able to do a better job than we are currently doing. Okay, the second part of your question relates to the investors looking at regulatory stability and transparency in the sector. Okay, well, this is something that we have not done before. So, like a moving rocket, we'll make our mistakes, we'll correct ourselves. I strongly believe that there are more lawyers here than those of us who are on the investment and the other side of the business. But I can quickly just add that each state is expected to implement regulations that will suit their own particular environment, their own particular situation. So if that is done, stability should be addressed. If that is done, we should be able to ensure that a lot of the fears of the investors are taken care of. Now, in terms of transparency, well, even existing market operator and transmission network operators don't supply us with live data. It would be nice if any particular state pick up the challenge and ensure that we get live data of what is happening at all the transmission stations. And then the franchisee or their sub-franchisees are now also able to also give us live data of what is happening at all the substations. Once everything goes live, we can clear fault faster. We can reduce theft. We can reduce vandalism. A lot of things will happen in that regard. The incentives will come once we're able to reduce losses. But let me warn, let no state government think this is a meal ticket or an opportunity for any set of politicians to make money. Before you know it, they will bankrupt their states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very Biodun Ogunle. And your very first comment was one of the notes I made when Onyinye said very enthusiastically that there will be 37 new markets, and I immediately scribbled down ability to pay. So thank you so much for your answers there. So much to follow up on. All right, still on the matter of private investment and bringing in those folks into the sector. Osefan Anegbe. So as far as the measures, Osefan, that the Act can introduce to encourage private sector participation and innovation, Osefan, in the market, how can that happen? How can investors leverage measures to contribute to the modernization and expansion of our power infrastructure?
Thank you, Rotus. Thank you for that very interesting introduction. Thank you for having me here. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone joining in. I'd say that most of our panelists have already alluded to the measures that the Act has introduced to encourage private sector participation, and I'm really just going to be adding to what has been said, right? So let's start with the demobilization of the sector in itself and the fact that more players are given leeway to enter into the market. Now, the Act also introduces very comprehensive guidelines on anti-competitive practices. I mean, ways to prevent that, so that every player in the market, those who are coming in and those who were already in the market, would have a free and fair market to play in. I mean, if you look at section 6, 7, if I'm correct, and then 121, you have those provisions there, to guarantee that. Another thing is, I mean, for investment, you're really looking at one, political will, which has already been established by this very comprehensive framework, that's the Act. Then you're also looking at money, right? Power projects are very capital intensive, and with the demobilization and decentralization that this Act has brought, or that this Act has guaranteed with sections 1, 2, and I think the transitional provisions, you will need a lot of funding for states to be able to manage this. States in themselves are already struggling with their with generating revenue or meeting their own financial obligations, right? So they will definitely need funding. They'll need money from investors, and investors need to be able to, they need guarantees, right, that their investments would return back profits. So on the one hand, we have an Act that has given a leeway for more market players, but you also have people who want to come into that market and put in money, but also want guarantees. They want incentives, they want subsidies, they want to be sure that they are playing in a market that is protected. And that is where state regulations would also come in, to ensure that they are working hand in hand with these investors to guarantee that their money is protected, right? Another thing I would say that the Act has done is it has also provided for, incentives that Onyinye has alluded to. There are incentives for feeding tariffs, especially for GenCos who are now mandated really to get power sources from alternative energy sources, which is renewable energy. So you have feed-in tariffs that have been provided for, you have waivers, you have tax incentives, right? You have an open access regime now for the markets. The NESI, that's the Nigeria Electricity Supply Industry, has been liberalized. And so you have investors who can now approach states and get licenses to operate mini grids, operate power plants within their territory. But for investors, you also want protection. And that is where state regulations will come in, especially for states who have gone ahead to formulate really their own, to enact their own regulations. I mean, you have, I think, Lagos, Kaduna, and Edo who have done that. There are other states who haven't, who will still be regulated by NEC. So even though we have potentially 36, 37 markets, this would take a while, right? This would take a while to flesh out. Another thing that the Act, another measure that the Act has done, has introduced, is you have promotion of renewable energy technologies, right, which investors can bring in. We'll need expertise. we'll need expertise, we'll need infrastructure to be set up. And this is where investors can also come in, because in feeding into the existing grid system, you need infrastructure for that, you need technical expertise for that. And that's where, you know, investment will come in, play a very, very, very large role in that. And another very good measure that the Act has introduced is that private investors can obtain licenses, right, for any aspect of the market, you know, generating, transmission, system operations, trading, distribution, supply of electricity. Private investors can actually operate that now, and there's no longer a monopolization of that market. So there are guidelines, clear guidelines that have been established for this licensing and monitoring of the market. And with the introduction of the ISO, that's the Independent System Operation, who has now been charged with the responsibility when created, that is to manage the market and ensure that there's fairness in the market. So this is really where investors, you know, want some sort of guarantees, right? Because one of the issues we have with investments in local and private is that people want to know that where their money is protected or backed up by law. And I think another measure that the Act does contribute to this is the asset protection provisions, where even in a situation whereby your investment has been taken over by, you know, national interest, you will be compensated so that your money is not gone. You know, in Nigeria Palace, we say, Otilo, your money has not gone yet. So there's that. I think investors need to also bear in mind that with electricity, what consumers are most concerned with is supply. They want supply, they want predictability, right? I remember there's a KPMG report that stated that that's quoted the CBN to say that in a year, that's annually, the Nigerians spend about $14 billion US, if I'm correct, on generators and fuel in a year. Now, Nigerians don't have a problem paying for power. You know, they don't have, I mean, nobody in the world really has a problem paying for power, as long as you can guarantee that you would have that power, and as long as you can predict that it will be available. And this is where investments really are needed to ensure that those infrastructures that can assist in the supply and the flow of power, you know, is readily available. And so I think that, you know, the Act has introduced several measures that can encourage private sector participation and innovation, right, through, you know, licensing, mandating renewable energy development. Even in the renewable energy space, you have several fundings already. I recall that recently the Shell Impact Investment declared that they were given about $11 million, if I'm correct, to sponsor the development of mini grids, right, in Nigeria. I think over 2,700 solar energy panels or so. But, you know, there's already some funding coming into that space. And I think that investors can tap into that, you know, can tap into bringing in expertise, right? Because in all of these markets that will be created, you need experts, you need people who understand the business, you need people who know how to go about these things. So you definitely need investment in that area, right? So yeah, if you embrace these measures that have been stated by my other panelists and, you know, some of all these provisions, you see that, you know, in adopting a holistic approach, you can, as an investor, play a significant role in modernizing and expanding the Nigeria's power infrastructure, and you can contribute to, you know, guaranteeing, or rather promoting, increased electricity access to Nigerians, and then efficiency in the markets, and invariably, you know, sustainable development. But be sure that, you know, with this Act and with the decentralization, states will not be able to fund these things by themselves. So they will need you to bring in your money. They will need you to bring in your expertise. And I think at the last NESI, that's the Nigerian Electricity Supply Industry Stakeholders meeting that held recently, we had states, you know, already showing that, see, they are creating an investor-friendly environment. They're not really looking to invest in this infrastructure, but they are willing to create a friendly environment for you to bring in your money and work hand in hand, and work hand in hand with you to ensure that, you know, there are guarantees, there are incentives that would attract, you know, businesses into their states and their subsidies. So I think that these are measures that private sector can take. Pardon me, private sector can participate in the market and, you know, bring in some innovation. And just to sum that up, I would say I would draw from the EVC who made a presentation and said, with the act, should we nurture or should we puncture, right? So in nurturing, you're talking about collaboration, right? Or should we puncture and just say, you know what, scrap every other thing that's existing and let's, start off, give birth to a new baby. But no. If we do that, it will be dangerous. And I'll leave that to, to further arguments. But I'd say that there are measures that have been put in place by the Act, well mentioned already. And these are provisions that investors can take advantage of. And, let's create a more efficient market. And yes, get returns on your money.
Amen. Amen to that. Thank you so much, Sifan. All right, so we've only got a few minutes left in this particular session with respect to investing. I was supposed to end at 11:05. So Ibukun, let me come back to you. Alignments, Ibukun, how does this act align with the government's broader plans and initiatives for the electricity industry in Nigeria? As far as that's the gist of it. How can investors, I guess, align their investment strategies with the plans to maximize impact? Ibukun.
Okay, thank you, Rotas. I love what Biodun said, that what we have is a rocket, and as it's moving, you course correct, where you have anything. As I said earlier, what the Act has done is to set out a framework. And I think my other speakers have spoken to I think Onye and others also spoke to the issue of creating different markets. So when you talk about the government's broad plans, what does the Nigerian government want? The Nigerian government wants, at COP26, we said we wanted 0 emissions by 2060. Nigerian government has the Sustainable Energy for All initiative, which is under the Sustainable Development Goals 7, which is clean and energy for all. The main highlights of that Sustainable Energy for All initiative is that we want to have 30% of renewables in our energy mix by 2030. Currently, I don't think we're doing anything in renewables in the energy mix. Most of our power comes from hydro and from Genco. Again, we want to reduce the percentage of people living without electricity from 60% when it was taken in 2015 to 10% in 2030. So we're busy saying we want to reduce that in the next 7 years. And we want to create energy efficiency, 100% energy efficiency in homes and 50% energy efficiency in industries. And they also want to support the growth of mini grids and solar homes. So that's what the government wants to do. The government wants to create power, have more power in a sustainable way, and decentralize the markets in such a manner that everybody, the consumers, have choice and can have access to electricity at an affordable rate. To do this, you have what is called the Rural Electrification Agency, which also speaks to renewable energy as well and has incentives. But we've already spoken about renewables. So let me speak to when you talk about what opportunities for investors. So far, we seem to have narrowed down the opportunities to the players in the sector. But I'll take a leaf from what Biodun said and Osafan. You have an opportunity for people who can set up systems in the states. For example, if you understand the framework of electricity, if you know how it's supposed to work. Remember, NERC was the only regulator. Now we have state regulators popping up and down. Who's going to train these people? Who's going to teach them? Who's going to educate them as to how a power system should run? As Biodun said, who's going to ensure that your systems are, you have smart systems, digital systems that you can pick up when power is being stolen or being dropped? There are so many opportunities that are popping up outside the actual power space itself. Now, you look at the power space itself and you ask yourself, okay, at what level do you want to play? Do you want to come in and play at the renewable level and do power to on unserved areas? You can do that. You can do solar energy on smaller scales. You can do hydro. And the opportunities are bound in all areas of the sector, such that the Act has set the framework, right? And when these states set their own balls in motion, what you should see, and I hope what I will see, is that by the time the laws are being made, I do not want the private sector to keep quiet. When laws are being made, I always think the best time is when it's being made. Someone like Biodun now, when the Lagos state wants to do its law or your state wants to make its law, I expect Biodun and other people in the private sector, no sir, to be there and say, look, this is what should be in your law, the Oyo State law or the electricity law. This is what should be there. So you can influence that process so that the law mirrors what you want. Just like Omusa alluded to, electricity theft is a big thing. It wasn't in the ESPRA. They just had one small thing there. Now it's specific. If you can do the same thing when these laws are going to come out, what will happen is that you have created an enabling environment and nobody knows your environment like you. I mean, if you watch the movie, I forgot the name now, but that has the guy in the jungle, Jaguar Paul, where he says, this is my jungle, you know? So this is your jungle for the industry. This is your jungle. And this is the time to let the people know that this is your jungle. Now, when you have these state markets, what's going to happen? What I foresee and what I hope is that we'll reach an area where you have open access. You know, someone has spoken about off-grid, but now let's talk about on the grid. The laws can be such that you can't say, oh, this is my power pool, so I'll be the only person to put power in there. It will become like your transmission network, state transmission network should now be like a pipeline. You pay, it enters into. So I foresee in Nigeria in the next 10 years where a building has maybe six flats and 6 meters from 6 different power companies, you know, and you can plug in and play, because what the situation should do is create greater efficiency where people can come in and you're plugging in and playing. But before we can do that, the regulation and the laws have to be right. And as I said earlier, it's not a one size fits all. I think it was Onye that mentioned that. It depends on where you are and what you can generate. If you're in a place that has lots of sunlight, you will tilt to solar. So I think there are lots of opportunities in this sector for people to play in. Do you want to come in at the equipment generation level? Do you want to come in at the monitoring level? Do you want to come in as a technical partner? Now, the Act talks about private-public partnership for generation of electricity and even you know, for transmission network. You also have your captive power, your embedded power. You know, you're talking about captive power where you're doing just 1 megawatt, you know, for consumption by the person producing the power. You have your embedded power where you're directly connected to a distribution system. So you can have little pockets of what I call of networks coming up. So for example, somebody can say, let me use my mother's hometown, Udogbolu in Ogun State, and say, we're far from this, and we have this, we have sunlight, we have this river, and we can generate this mix and supply to this area. It doesn't have to be a big grid. So we can have a situation where we have little pockets of electricity, and people just have to, for investors, look into what you can get, ensure that the enabling environment, now is the time to start. Speak to your lawyers, speak to the advisors, ensure that when these laws are coming out, let us have a good representation of how the law should help you. It'll be too late to let the law come out, as we tend to do in Nigeria, and then you say, oh, they should have had this, they should have had that. And I think the industry is beginning to become very vocal and it's learning its lessons. Yes, it will take time. Yes, you have the transitional provisions, as was alluded to. So basically, the state will set up its own sector. It will let NET know, and then you have the handshake so that there's no lapse. So I think it's a good opportunity for people. It's just that we have to look at where to plug into. The government wants to give everybody power. The government wants it to be clean. The government has goals. And like someone rightly said, Nigeria, we have so many laws. I mean, if I read out the laws we have about climate change, we have laws, we have lofty goals of getting X amount. I think we even passed one of our goals. You know, we like this vision 20, this vision, that, and that. Yes, but now we actually have a framework. And as I think Biodo alluded to it, that it's not a time to just say, oh, let's make money. But you know, what you have now is a time for people to come in, lend their expertise, look at projects properly, let the projects be commercially driven. The law now has what you call the obligation to buy, you know, apart from generating, that was mentioned by, I think, Onye, there's also an obligation that you must buy for renewable energy. So you don't have to be afraid that, oh, if I produce this, I don't have an off-taker. No, part of the conditions of a licensee will be that they have to off-take renewable energy. So we're not only talking about this generation now. If you have a trading license, if you're a distributor, you have to buy a certain amount of renewable energy. And what this does is that hopefully, if it's cheaper, it lowers the cost of electricity across, because it's a blended rate. And to me, those are the opportunities that abound in the sector. There are many, many opportunities in the sector, apart from the mainstream generation, transmission. There's a whole range of services that can be given out, that people can come and invest and play in the sector. And we do hope that once these all start off, the private sector will play an important role in lending their voice. Please, please, please do not sit back. Do not, wait until the law has happened and then we start talking about it. But I'm sure people like Onye, Nosa, and Biodun will be at the forefront of speaking to any law when these laws start, because it's important. The law is for the private sector. Too many times in Nigeria, we find out that most of the laws are pushed by the government agencies. And I, for one, want to see a Nigeria where, like America, like in the UK, it is the people in the private sector that are pushing the people in the House of Representatives, like say, oh, we need power in Jigawa and we have sunlight. Let's push for a solar project. Let's push for this and that. So that is my take on the opportunities that are present. The government has set its objectives. Let the private sector come in, make its own objectives known, because they're perfectly aligned together. And there are so many areas that they can play into. Thank you, Rotas. Did I deal with that, or do you have any questions?
You dealt with it and bang on time, because it's 11:05 right now. So we now ease into. Thank you so much, Ibukwan. You're getting a lot of questions. All the panelists are getting so many questions. So now we're going to go into session 3 now. Future of the electricity industry from now until about 11:30. Thank you, Ibukwan. We come back now to Biodun Ogunleye. Biodun, how this is now the future. We're looking at the future. Right, and we're always very optimistic about the future. How do you envision the future of the electricity industry in Nigeria, considering the recent changes brought about by the Act? That's the Electricity Act we've been talking about. How do you think, Biodun, that these changes will impact the average Nigerian consumer? Because I'm already seeing questions about tariffs. So Biodun, over to you.
Thank you very much. Now you want me to play the role of a diviner or something? Well, let's try. First and foremost, you must note that we're not good at transitioning things. It's not that we do it deliberately, but it's just one of the things we do badly. There will be all manner of warranted and unwarranted, planned and unforeseen challenges throwing themselves at us. And I also even see a couple of laws to
Did we lose Biodun, or is it just me? Is it? Okay, is it just me, or did we? I think we just lost Biodun, unfortunately. I think we did. I can see Osifan's video is on and her eyes are blinking. So it's not just, okay, so Osifan is reacting to one. I thought you could, hey, we need to have a session on nairametrics about internet connectivity here, okay? That's what we need to have, because, so hopefully we get Biodun, but you heard him already. Transitions, we don't do transitions very well. And with respect to where things go in the future, it looks like we might be paying more money. Onye, let me come to you. Hopefully we get Biodun back. Do you want to take that? Okay, I'll give it to you, Onye Nzulu. What does the future look like, considering the recent changes? You sounded really optimistic last time, so maybe we're going to get more optimism from you, but what are people going to be paying in the future? I think that's what a lot of people want to know as far as the future. Is it going to get more expensive? Go ahead, Onye.
Yes, thank you very much, Rotus. I think to speak specifically on tariff, I think the tariff is going to increase in the short term.
Recording in progress.
And not necessarily because.
Okay, sorry, hang on. Sorry, I'm sorry. Onye, it looks like we've got Biodun back. I think he had a temporary mix-up with his connection. So thank you. We'll come to you. Your question, you're next. Biodun, sorry. Okay, we lost you. Please continue where you were. You were saying that we lost you. In fact, let me tell you where we lost you. Maybe just start from the beginning, because you were saying that we don't do transitions very well. That part, why don't we do transitions very well, and then talk about the future of the electricity industry for us, for the consumer?
Okay. One, there are all manner of let me be careful here. There are all manner of vested interest and issues that we need to battle with first. The existing shareholders need to understand why we need to go this way. They need to work with those who are pushing for this as the way to go. Then we need the customers to also now fully understand. I cannot be it cannot be the same thing. We have to do a lot of things properly. The right way is to get into the details. And they said the details is the devils are in the details. So I suspect and I see a lot.
They don't want Biodun to tell the truth. That's what's going on. You heard him when he said you have to be careful with what he's saying. Vested interest. The moment he mentioned vested interest, internet gets cut off one more. You see how let me not promote conspiracy theories here, but it looks like his internet might have some issues. Hopefully we get him back. Okay, so Onye, let me bring you back in. Go right ahead. I'm sure then as you're talking now, Biodun will now come back again. Now this is how this internet thing goes. Well, Onye, just let me let you go ahead.
Okay, I mean, I can speak to a bit of what Biodun was trying to speak about. There's and I think I alluded to it earlier. We have to implement this right with the right intent. All the stakeholders have to be on the table. The right level of compromises have to be made for the implementation to be very smooth, with the big picture that Ibukun has alluded to, with taking 90 million Nigerians who do not have energy access out of energy access. So if I give examples because I do know the downside, just that I'm forever an optimist, right? A state can decide to choose to remonopolize. Now remember that the state governments now have the authority. They can choose to remonopolize and say only one person can generate in the state. So we're back to where we were before, right? So it's potentially possible, right? But then there are 36 states, right? So states, like I said earlier, states can compete in a manner of speaking, compete for investment, compete for, and it opens the market for even further investment. Remember that electricity is an enabler. So if in state A, right, and I'm specifically not calling any state, if in state A, the state governments build regulations that allow for 24-hour supply, allow for transparency, allow for all the beautiful things we want, allow for cost-reflective electricity and all of that, what happens is that the remaining investment is going to go there. Manufacturers will go there, right? Because electricity will be cheaper. The service industry there will improve, maybe even tourism and all of that. So that the enablement that electricity brings will then layer on top of it more and more indices of growth. We will see like a liberalization of all of that. And I give an example. I specifically today deal in the rural communities, right? So we build mini grids, and maybe I'm dovetailing into my own question right now. And the question was, what do we see for consumers in the future? And I want to say, it's really not future anymore, because if you look at the way our mini grids have been organized, my customers that I serve have better quality of supply than I do. And I live in Abuja, right? And these customers are, if I want to go there, it's a 7-hour drive from Abuja. But they do have better quality of supply than I do. In many instances, they are on for 24 hours a day. If their power is going to go off, I'm going to send them an SMS 2 or 3 days before. Their systems are automated, right? My technical manager sits in Abuja and can turn off and turn on the system. Everybody's metered. So you pay as you use, right? And what has happened is, specifically in this community, we've seen in a manner of speaking, more, will I say, rural to semi-urban migration, because more people are coming to those places because there's power, right? We've seen my community today has maybe over 4 millers that were not there before, 4 rice millers, right? Because power is available. And it's this unit that only serves about 500 people that we want. I think that's what the Electricity Act really intends to do, to take this unit and blow it across the country, because it is already happening. It's happening in very, very, very small pockets across the country. But again, the tariff in that place is higher. So also my customers pay a higher tariff than I do. So the tariff is also higher, but the quality of service is superb. The way that if anything happens today, my customers will bluff. I mean, they're going to ring my phone 1,000,000 times, right? The level of interactions that we have, the customers are aware when power is about to go out. And we've seen growth and development in the community. The health center now, because it has electricity, it's now storing vaccines. It's become a place for other communities around, to come in and, do some other health-related activities that couldn't be done before. So we're seeing all of that, and that is the enablement that it will bring across the industry, right? So, for example, the fact that, you can generate more means that the people that were capped at 1 megawatts before can generate more power and potentially sell. With the feed-in tariff, what will happen is, and when, also alluding to what Björn was trying to say, if the regulation, if the policy and the implementation framework is done well, it means that I can sell power back to the grid. So I can also make more money, right? If I have over generation, I sell power back to the grid. And so it's also good for me. Another thing that I think it will do is in the IT sector, right? Because for us to get there, to have that level of collaboration around the network, we would need a very robust IT infrastructure, SCADA, and all the Internet of Things, so that all those transactions will be automated and will be done in a manner that, there's transparency. And then once we have data, we can better plan, because now we know this is the data coming from here. This is the potential energy resource they will need in 5 years, in 10 years. So I think it was Ibiku that alluded to the integrated system planning, also that the act enables. So we can then plan for future energy use. Once we can aggregate this data and put it on any IT system that we choose that works best for us, we can then better even plan for the future. It becomes our base data source, and it provides data for any other thing that we need to plan. I think I'll pause here, but again, very optimistic about the next 5 years in the sector.
All right, and you notice how dark it is? As we were speaking, you guys know what happened. That's why it's dark where I am right now. Luckily, my modem it's being charged, so hopefully I don't go dark, but thus there you have it. Thank you so much, Onyinye. Nusa, let me come to you, please. As far as the future is concerned, for the future of the Nigeria's electricity industry, from the perspective of the consumer,
recording in progress.
The average Nigerian. Nusa, can you jump in on how you see things playing out there?
Thank you, Rotus. I think that I'm an optimist as well, and I share a lot of the comments that Onyinye has shared. I see her team doing a lot in the mini grid space, and many like her have done a lot in the past few years, right? So absolutely, if you're talking about energy access, we have, as she alluded to, about 90 million Nigerians, 40% of the country without access to electricity. And so we need to deal with that. We have one of the lowest rates, or the highest rates, I should say, across the world. And that level of access, right, to basic things in the world like electricity should not be in 2023 what we're talking about. So there's concerted efforts to get there. There will be different business models There will be different ideas, some of which include mini grids, some of which will include the kinds of pricing or the structures that go into defining communities that are too far from the grid, right? So think about it. Imagine the community that Onye had said, right? 500 odd, say residents, right? 500 connections. Imagine that it would take, and the nearest transmission line is maybe 10 kilometers from there. The cost of extending the line alone, right, will be much more expensive than putting a small system that works for all of them, right? And so you would see that to get energy access, we need to go deeper, and the act allows the REA, which is the Rural Electrification Agency, do a lot more. The REA has been extremely active in the last 5 to 7 years. They raised almost $750 million from the World Bank in terms of total package. They're talking to all manner of people, and we see good traction there. So energy access is most important for the rural areas. In the urban or semi-urban areas, you will still have about 80% of the people with clear direct access. And more of the problem there is in reliability and affordability. So to look at reliability, I think Biodun was spot on in his assessment of what will happen going forward. A lot of engagement, collaboration, discussion. If you look at investors who are in the sector now, some of them have paid close to $100 million or more to acquire licenses for franchise areas. And so how to navigate that transition is important to make sure everybody is carried along for the benefit of the Nigeria. If I were to summarize what the Nigerian benefits at this point, is that you can hold not only the federal government, you can hold the state governor responsible for the level of electricity that you get, because he is able to, with the House of Assembly, make laws that should enable you get improved supply. And so you will see that true to the Nigerian culture, closer to election time, closer to when it is at those periods, you have a very strong voice and you can get things going in terms of policy. We also need to participate, as Ibukun spoke about, when laws are being created. I used to see that some of the most knowledgeable people will fold their arms and say, well, they're not going to get good at it anyways and not participate. I think that that level of participation must increase for us to get better quality regulation, better thought out regulations. There's, as optimistic as I am about this act, there's still a lot of gaps, right? There's vested power that is not necessarily clarified. When you give someone a blank check, right, it could be used for absolute good or the worst of evils, right? And so we need to manage all of that. But for again, reliability, what I would say is you will see a lot more and newer business models, right? So you will see bilateral transactions, you will see different embedded generation solutions, you will see the renewable energy possibilities, including net metering, including battery energy storage, including smarter grids. Some people will figure things out before the others, and there will be that opportunity to learn from the more or the most advanced communities. And so I see generally improved access, improved reliability, but a much difficult position in terms of affordability. A lot of people will complain about the prices. A lot of people, especially with what is going on right now, with hiking all the other inflation and all the other prices for energy and things like that, there will be serious affordability concerns. And there's a need to protect the most vulnerable people in the community. The Act does that through a PCAF. It's a fund for the less privileged. It mandates some contribution to go there and some measure of subsidy for the most vulnerable in society. Affordability will always be a problem. But as we've seen in the mini grids, if you can provide enough guarantee for the supply, what is remaining is for consumers to manage it better. So Rotus, maybe in a year or two, instead of your light to go off, you see that maybe you turn it off by yourself and say, well, I can't pay 1,000 naira per kilowatt hour. I'll just have this light switched off for this conference, right? So those are my thoughts, right?
Thank you very much. So I really appreciate your thoughts there. Okay, I see our Oga Biodun is back. Oga Biodun, can we trust your internet?
Otis, let's, you know how these things happen. Maybe I was speaking too much against the utilities, and somebody just decided to show their hand. But it's okay. I think it should be a lot stable now. Okay, so you can trust it. We can go.
All right, so the thing is, we only have 5 minutes to go, and I wanted to ask Osefa a question about renewables. Well, just let's get your thoughts, Biono, on what you wanted to say. You were talking about the transition period as far as it being difficult. So if you can just quickly make the point in about a minute or two, that would be great.
Okay, some bit of confusion. We'll get over it with time. Instead of focusing on the discourse, users also needs to understand that electricity is not something that can be wasted. So we need to be more responsible with our usage. Then we also need to understand the fact that if somebody is stealing electricity next to you, to your door, to your company, to your business outlet, and you're looking away, you are actually preparing the ground for unreliable supply over time, because the new environment is such that people will only put supply where they know they will get recovery. I think in 1 minute, maybe that will serve.
Thank you very much, Biodo. Okay, Osefa, let me come to you now. Just a few minutes to go. As I speak, it is raining. It is raining heavily. And I remember Ibuku earlier was talking about renewables, solar energy, and so on. So the sun isn't out right now. And if I had to depend on solar, I probably have no power. So I want you to talk about, Osefa, the renewable energy portion of our conversation, and how the role that renewable energy is supposed to play with this new dispensation, with this act, and what the opportunities and challenges that you anticipate for the transition, Osefa.
Okay, thank you, Rotus. So to summarize that, I would just say first you would have more and increased electricity access, right? So you have more options with renewable energy. You have predictability. Like I said before, consumers really do not mind paying for power. They just want to be sure that they can get that power. Onyinye said something about the community that she's serving. So there's the challenge of paying the initial high cost, but they are sure of what they're getting and they're able to measure that, which is metering, right? So yes, the opportunities are there with increased access, more options, the ability to even switch users, right? So if I don't want company A serving me or Disco A serving me, I can switch to the next one. Or if I don't want this particular product, I can switch to the other provider, right? So there's that option there that will be available. There's also the environmental benefits, right? Traditional energy source like oil and gas, fossil fuels. Actually, we all know about the whole climate change that is going on, but the promotion of that. So there is the benefit where you have less carbon monoxide, CO2 emissions going on, and you have, a better environment or a cleaner environment. And then you also have, job creation, right? And economic growth largely, because where you have more investors playing in the renewable energy space, you definitely have more revenue, and then you have more increased economic growth, right, for the country. But for we, the consumers, we have more options. The challenges that I see would be the initial high cost, really. I recall that some years ago when the renewable energy space just started to expand, you had people who were looking for clients, who were looking for people to sell this thing to. Now is consumers looking for which one is the most affordable, right? So you have that the high cost there. You also have integration of renewable energy source into the grid, which the Act has mandated. So you have that. Then we have the issue of limited capacity or limited expertise, which the Act has also sort of like provided for in introducing the training fund. So you'd have that. You'd have a big issue is education, right? Consumers actually need to be educated about what these benefits are, what these opportunities are, and how they can get what they want, which is power supply. So there's the challenge of education, and most of the consumers don't even know, what is available to them and what options they can choose from. So there's the challenge of education and awareness that needs to go out there. There's also the challenge of distribution networks, right? And how we're able to transmit and just switch, because you have most of your, our time, I have 1 more minute. So I'll just summarize and say that opportunities are the energy security, there's a better quality of service, there's more choices for the consumers, there's protection of the consumer rights, there's innovation in infrastructure, but the challenges will still be high cost, education, integration into the power grid, and then limited technical expertise and capacity. I hope that answers your question. And yes, rural electrification, you have more collaborations now coming in with the REA. So there's that. Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you, Stefan. Look, speaking, all right, so now panelists, thank you. Awesome. Let's see now, we go from now until 11:45 with lots of questions. And I highlighted one particular question. Osefa kind of jumped in there. She kind of touched on this already. This person is anonymous. He didn't put a name, but let me read it out here. Is the underlying, and I hope you guys can hear me because it's raining pretty hard outside, but I'll be as loud as possible. Is the underlying problem of electricity in Nigeria not the fact that the population at large is simply too poor to be able to afford it? As we've seen from the removal of the fuel subsidy, the Nigerian economy has largely been propped up by massive government subsidies, and the removal of those subsidies precedes the entrance of private investors. Once removed, the true purchasing power of Nigerians becomes apparent and shrinks the size of the critical mass of customers who can afford it. So I would love for all of you to jump in on this, maybe a minute each or so, because that's, it was Onyinye that touched on this when she said, oh, there's 37 new markets, and then Biodun said, well, can they all pay? So the basic question is here, is there a market that is sustainable enough for private investors to come in? Because the electricity tariffs, we heard they were going to be increased July 1st, but then the government pushed it back. So that's going to come at some point. So maybe I'll start with Buku. Let me come back to the top. Are we too poor to afford this new dispensation?
Well, if you remember, I did allude to the fact that since the floating of the Naira has fallen to the dollar. 70% of the cost of a Genco is feedstock of gas, which is denominated in dollars but paid for in Naira. So that is going to mean there's a hike in tariff. Now, when you look at that setting up a new power plant or setting up a new renewable power plant is going to come at a cost, either which way. But over the years, the cost of setting up a renewable power plant is less. Now, when you have your renewable power plant, you don't have to pay for feedstock. You're not paying for the sun to shine. You're not paying for the water. You're not paying for the wind. You're not paying for geothermal. You're not paying for biogas. Do you understand? There's not that recurring cost of expenditure. So that should theoretically mean that we have electricity at a lower cost. Now, if you talk about the people being poor, yes, we know that things are happening, but let me ask you a question. I'll give an example. Up until January this year, diesel was going for, I think like 700 naira a liter, and petrol was still 182 or so. So people, if you had a diesel generator and a petroleum generator, what you would do is you'd look at it that, look, do I really need the diesel? I can manage without my air conditioner and the heavy things while I will power my little small petrol generator. The moment petrol has gone now to 620 and diesel is 580 or 560, people will change. If you have a diesel generator, you say, okay, I have a diesel generator. It even has more capacity. It can power my AC, it can power my electrical car or anything, all things in my house. So you make that choice between a diesel generator and your petrol generator, because petrol is now more expensive than diesel. So even for the poor people, if you speak to the man on the street, no matter what the cost of electricity is, in as much as it's talk to the barber, talk to the woman making puff, talk to the person who has a local booker, talk to the person having the hairdressing salon, tell the people that has a restaurant, if you look at the cost of generating the power yourself, which I think Asafan alluded to, the amount of money we're spending, so I think 14 billion or so on alternative power sources of life. The fact is that it's a necessity and it's something that you have to use as whether a business or as a home. So what you will drive for is efficiency in how you use it. But to avoid that cost, I don't think it's possible. And it is something that we will pay and people will get used to it. If you walk around Lagos nowadays, you see places, markets and places or houses where their street lights are on all day. People will stop that. It will become like England. When you want to make a cup of tea, you don't fill your kettle to the top. You just fill it to the level that it shows for one cup. That's how we'll become more energy efficient. This habit of putting your air conditioner on in your room because you want it to be cold while you are in the parlor will stop. People will begin to ration how they use electricity, just the same way people are now being more circumspect about how they use their cars. People are not just driving around anyhow like we used to do. You now think and you plan your movement because you know you're paying between 580 to 620 per liter. You're going to be more prudent in the way you go ahead. But yes, unfortunately, I wouldn't say we can't afford it, but the people will prefer it to buying fuel to power their homes. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Ibuku. Let's jump ahead now. There's another question here. Onye, let me throw this to you. This is from Anthony Iyashele. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anthony asks, metering has continued to be a problem. How can this be resolved? Onye, what's your take on metering? Is Onye still with us? Okay, maybe Onye is not with us. All right, let me go to Nusa. Okay, Onye. All right, go ahead, Onye. Metering.
I'm still here. Can you hear me, Rotus?
We can hear you, but we can't see you. The NEPA, our PHC, they take lights where you are. Okay, Onye looks like she's shaky. See?
That's probably said that. No, that's still.
We're having trouble hearing. We can't see you. Maybe
But
we
can
need
you
to
hear
give
me? I deliberately turned
off
off the video. It's raining and network
Yeah,
is becoming a bit poor.
Are you in Abuja?
Yeah.
You're in Abuja, right?
I work in Abuja. I'm currently in Lagos, so
Okay,
it's
fine.
raining
So
for
it's
all of
raining
us.
here as well. All right, go ahead. Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead. The metering issue.
Yes. I think to speak specifically on the act actually anticipates and says something like no meter, no new connection, right? But of course, there's a legacy metering issue. I think we have over 6 million, about 6 million active customers across all the discos that do not have meters and have gone to deal on electricity estimated billing. We have seen NEC over and over again try NEC and the industry generally.
I hope everyone can hear me and see me. Okay, Ibuku and Sefa are moving around. So
yeah, we can
yes.
we can hear and see you. I think maybe if Onye can save
to develop something that is robust enough.
Oh yeah, we lost you. We lost you. Hold on a second. We lost. I think that's why you turned off your video. We lost you for 1 second. Let's see now. Okay, yeah, okay, go right ahead. Just back up to where you were talking about. You have to back up to about no meter, no connection, I think.
Okay. So I mean that's what's in the act today. But I said that the sector generally, NESI and NEC and even Federal Ministry of Finance and CBN, there has been several interventions into the metering space. We had something called CAPME before, and then we had MAP, and then we had the mass metering program, and potentially we'll have something else again in the next couple of months. So I'm saying, I don't know, is it that we've not tried a system long enough to figure it out, or that we've not found what works, whatever model it is that will work for the sector, or maybe we need different, I don't know, different models for, different segments of the market and different locations. But with all these interventions, we still have over 6 million people connected to the DISCO networks that have not been metered. It is more or less an implementation. It sits on the implementation side. The challenges exist, right? We need capital for meters. And we have seen that the capital in the tariffs before now have not been able to fund meters. And that's why we've had 3 separate programs. Those programs was basically around unlocking finance for metering. We haven't seen the kind of traction that we expected with all of those. But I think as Biodu alluded to, as we continue to move, we would learn. There's a huge metering gap in the sector today, and more people will be metered. Hopefully, also as it goes now into states, states can be able to find, will I say, an implementation strategy that would allow, for us to take those problems as bite size, because we've tried to solve it as Nigeria-wide, but now we can take it as bite size, state-wise, and, have policies that allow each state to be metered, according to the unique things of those states. If there are locations that don't need the kind of infrastructure that we have seen prescribed by NEC and NEMSA for metering, we can have, lower, I don't know how to explain it, but we can have meters that better suit the kind of customers that we need. But yes, I do agree it's a problem in the sector. There is provision in the Act for metering to be done, but even before now, we've had like 3 different regimes trying to solve the metering problem, and we haven't quite solved it. But there's progress in the sector, and once we are able to unlock more capital, the metering issues will be solved. NEC also has something called the capped estimated billing regime, that makes sure that the energy sent to the unmetered customers, is calculated in a manner that allows for some level of fairness, basing that calculation on existing meters in the locations that the meters are. That's what's happening in the market now as we scale to meter more and more people. Like I said, there are 6 million people, registered customers that are not yet metered, and it will take a while to cover that gap.
Thank you so much, Oyinye. We'll have to move quickly along. So, see, look at that, 2 hours now. The time just like, we don't want to advertise, but Ibuku and Osefan, it looks like they've had the best internet of everyone, because their videos they just turned off their videos, but their videos have been on. So maybe send a private chat, Ibuku and Osefan, let us know who your internet service providers are so that we can maybe jump on. The states, Nosa, let me come to you here. Henry Young sends in this question. I want to find out if there are penalties attached to states and the new licenses by the federal government in case of non-compliance. The reason is some states, for certain constraints, which are fiscal, could decide to abandon power projects for more utilitarian projects. So, Nosa, what do you think of that? Do the states have the capacity? Because all of these states, I mean, I know they just shared, well, they didn't share 1.9 trillion, they only shared about 900 billion, but do the states have the capacity here, Nosa?
Two things. Do they have the capacity? I think that if they get the right manpower in place, if they get the right officers in place, commissioners, and the governors themselves have the right focus, they can unlock capital, right? As I think it was Osefan that stated earlier, what she was saying and what is true is the state themselves don't have to invest. They just need to create an enabling environment for people to come in to invest. Again, I go back to the Act of 2005 and why I believe, in my opinion, it didn't quite succeed. and some of the things that are missing in this new act. We had very clear technical guidelines in the initial act. Generation, transmission, distribution, all of that was clear. There was no ambiguity as to how technically power was supposed to go. We knew there was an REA, we knew there were new technologies coming in, that was clear, right? Regulatory provisions were clear as well. There was NEC, they had a commission, they had regulations, they had all these things, as we would do with law, right? To make sure that everybody understood what it took to run a power business, all of the guidelines and all of the orders in place. What was lacking and what remains lacking is a clear and concise financial framework. How do you raise capital for infrastructure projects like power, which require long-term finance opportunities? You can't go to a Nigerian bank and say, give me 20-year money at 9% so that I can build this power generator, right? And as far as you can't do that, really, and if you choose to go to the Nigerian bank and you get 5 to 7 year money at 23%, what would that tariff be, right? So apart from the states and their ability, really, it's the personality of the governors, personality of the House, the people that they're talking to, the right consultants to put the right frameworks and law in place, as well as a financial framework that guarantees an investor return. If they can do that very clearly, states will work, for sure.
Thank you so much for that, Asad. We've actually come to the end of the Q&A, but let me just quickly, we have to quickly get our other panelists quickly here just to address a couple other questions very, very quickly. NIFA is asking this question here. I'll throw it to Biodun. I think Biodun's internet is fine. Biodun, NIFA asks, can what we have in the Nigerian telecommunications industry be replicated in the power distribution sector, whereby one can port from one to the next? Can that be done under this act?
Thank you very much. I don't know whether I'm audible, whether you can hear me, because the rain is really pounding hard on.
Yes, we can hear you clearly. We can hear you clearly.
Fantastic. Okay, so there are lessons that we can transfer from telecoms to power. I'll give you an example. Metering. There is this, I don't know the right English now, but there is this lie that we keep telling ourselves about metering. Please, if any investor can see a business model, there will be investment in metering. And the technology or the knowledge you can share from telecoms is that, remember when we started in telecoms, when you buy your new phone, you need to take it to, they need to send you a code when you have inserted your SIM before you can start using it. And at that beginning point, a phone you are using on X may not readily be switched to Y network. Now, what am I saying? Meters can be available in our supermarkets, in stores around the corner, I'm saying in a manner that everybody will have access and everybody can easily change their meters, and whoever it is that is servicing that end of the business for them. It's possible. It's only a matter of the network providers staying as network provider, allowing partners that will retail on their behalf, that will do the business of customer, all the customer fronting things on their behalf, and ensure that once we have provided you with meters, you can even buy meters from Lagos and send it to your village. Buy meters for your house and move it to another house. For as long as what you are saying is a portability. What do we do to ensure that metering is portable? Right now, you need to know somebody in any of the disco. You have to pass through a set of stringent collocation criteria, not just with the regulators, but with individual discourse themselves. You see, to overcome all those obstacles is time consuming, is initial capital or cost consuming, and before you say it, a lot of people are discouraged. But if there's a national standard, and I think we have one, and we have a NEMSA to confirm that your meter is up to that standard, the next issue we need to deal with is how do we make these meters portable? And once some techie people can help us deal with that, we're good. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Biodun. All right, final one here to Osifa. Osifa, there was a question coming in on renewable energies and flexibility. So this is from Alabi. Yes, Alabi asks, how will the electricity supply industry manage flexibility that will be required with the influx of distributed energy due to feed-in from renewable energy sources? So Alabi is asking, can everything be managed appropriately? Osifa, very quickly, because we're practically out of time.
Okay, so can everything be managed appropriately? Yes, Alabi, they can. However, this will take a lot of collaboration, right? It will take collaboration with all the the government, the regulators, and the stakeholders, the private sector people. But yes, they can be managed. It can be managed. The Act already makes provisions for how renewable energy development or power sources should be integrated into the traditional energy generation. So yes, this can be managed. It will just take proper monitoring, implementation, collaboration, really. But yes, it can be managed. And yes, there is flexibility in view.
Great stuff. Thank you so much. Thanks for being brief. I wanted to make sure all the panelists got in a question from our Q&A. There's so many more. This happens all the time because Nairametrics picks the best topics. But I think the main thing that had to be hit on was whether or not we can afford this and also the meter issue. So thank you to our panelists. So many more questions. Everybody also has been asking, will there be a link available? Yeah, follow Nairametrics on Twitter, website, nairametrics.com, the Nairametrics YouTube page. Everything will be there. So thank you, panelists. This was really awesome. Rosa Sodi, I don't even know if I introduced myself earlier. Arise TV's Global Business Report, Smooth FM's Business Express. You know, we talk about this stuff all the time. Yeah, so I think I will thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everybody that sent questions. I'll throw it back to Johanna for our closing remarks.
All right, thank you, Rotas, and of course, the great job from you moderating the sessions, and of course, the panelists who provided so much insight. It's all rather exciting stuff. The new Electricity Act, liberalizing the market. We're in the transition period right now. And I mean, so much insight from our analysts with the policies being drawn up by the states. And, you know, as has been said, implementation is key. So while it's exciting, throughout the whole conversation, there was that sign, tread with caution, right? Nobody wants to lose money. So we'll see how it goes. We'll be monitoring this whole transition phase. And I mean, so many interesting things were said as the conversation went forward. How affordable will it be? The importance of tapping into renewable energies. I believe it was Ibukun that, you know, said that. I mean, I've jotted so much, and I hope you have too. And if you feel you missed anything, this conversation would definitely be up on YouTube, right? It's up on YouTube for you to, you know, get the details and perhaps, you know, run through everything much later. A huge thank you to every single one of you that took the time out to be a part of this webinar. Thank you to our analysts, our panelists who provided so much insight. Big ups to you, Rotas, for asking the right questions, the right follow-up questions, and selecting the important questions. And hopefully, I mean, we do follow up of, you know, everything that's happening in the economy, power. We know how much it affects the economy. So during the week, Nairametrics on Twitter, we have Twitter Spaces, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 p.m. So I'm sure there'll be follow-up discussions there as well as this whole act unravels itself, especially at the state level. So yes, be a part of that, 6 p.m. as well. We have Follow the Money on Saturdays by 10 10 a.m. So be a part of that as well. It's important we know what is happening in our economy. Nairametrics is the place to go when it comes to business news, investment news, career news, and so much more. So make sure you're following them for all the latest news and updates. Nairametrics across all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, you can always get more details on any developing story as long as it involves business, career, investments, and so much more on the website, nairametrics.com. And yes, I can't, not talk about the deals book. There's a yearly deals book. It's a compilation of all the deals that happened in the year 2020, which have been carefully created, curated deals with a list of investors across the year. You would want to get your hands on that because you want to get your money up. So thank you once again for being a part of today's webinar. We do this every once in a while, explore different sectors. So feel free, keep following our metrics and you hear about the next one. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Rotas, and big ups to Nairametrics for this. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.